Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind of Marie. Today is a very special episode for me because I am thrilled to have a truly extraordinary guest, Laurie Kay, who is the author of Confessions of a Rock and Roll Name Dropper, My Life Leading Up to John Lennon's Last Interview. Her memoir takes us behind the scenes of some of the most iconic moments in music history, from intimate interviews with John Lennon to producing legendary radio specials. This is someone who I have been incredibly excited to talk to. Laurie Kay has shared the stage, so to speak, with some of the greatest musicians of all time, and her experiences are equal parts thrilling, intense, and inspiring. So let me just give you a warm welcome to the show today. Thank you for joining us, Laurie.
Big thanks, I'm so happy to talk to you about my book and my rock radio related life and career with you on your podcast. It's going to be great.
So, again, it's such an honor to have you here, and I can't wait to dive into your story and share your insights with my listeners. So, let's just start at the beginning. You mentioned growing up with transistor radio practically glued to your ears. Can you tell us about that and how music shaped your life from such a young age?
Well, thanks to my dysfunctional family upbringing, starting as a toddler, I concentrated nearly all day and night on radio music and DJs with my transistor radio plugged in my ears. And I continued escaping from family contact for years thanks to radio music. It was super helpful.
So, you shared that your family life was challenging. How did those experiences influence your drive to pursue music and storytelling?
Well, my mother couldn't care less about my abilities or my amusements, so I went into it on my own and took advice from those who appreciated me and my talent, and that's what made me successful.
So, when did you realize that rock radio wasn't just a passion, but that it could become a real career for you?
Well, while I was in high school, I was encouraged to go for an on-air radio career by a big DJ, B. Mitchell Reed at KMET-FM. He dug my voice and my thoughts. He was also known as the Beamer, and he invited me into his DJ booth at the station to congratulate me for winning tickets to see the Rolling Stones, who I'd never seen before. So I was really excited. It was their Nicaragua benefit concert at the Forum, and it was one of the best shows I've ever been to.
That sounds amazing. What a privilege. Your career is intersected with so many iconic artists, obviously. Let's talk about interviewing Paul and Linda McCartney, George Harrison, and George Martin. What was that like?
Well, they were all super cool and made possible thanks to the RKO radio network. Going to London for my very first time to meet up with Paul and Linda and their latest lineup of Wings in June 1979 was great. And talking with George Harrison in December 78 about his recent marriage to Olivia and becoming the father of Danny, that was terrific too. And my time spent with producer George Martin at my radio station, KFRC AM in San Francisco, was so complimentary. He told me he loved the Beatles radio show I'd written and co-produced. Yeah.
That's so cool. And the Beatles radio specials, 14 hours expanded to 17 hours. Tell me how that project came together and what made it so groundbreaking.
Well, I was hired to write RKO Presents the Beatles when I first got my full-time KFRC radio job in the newsroom. And I had to do lots of research, writing, and producing for the longest Beatles show ever created in our country. And it was so popular when it aired, it got expanded to 17 hours from 14 and syndicated to play around the world and use the time I'd originally come up with. Use the name I'd originally come up with. The Beatles from Liverpool to Legend.
Perfect. George Martin even told you it was the best Beatles special he'd ever heard. How did that feel, hearing that kind of praise from such a legend?
Totally awesome. He autographed his book for me, too, All You Need Is Ears, his biography, as a true lover of my radio special, and told me he'd listened to my 17-hour Beatles show twice in England. Wow.
Wow, commitment of time there, and to be so highly commended. That's awesome. So your interview with John Lennon ended just hours before his assassination, a day you've described as both the best and worst of your life. Can you share what that experience was like even now, almost 45 years later?
Well, our lengthy multi-hour interview at the Dakota with John Lennon and Yoko Ono was incredible and super friendly. but finding out John was shot and killed mere hours after it ended made it horrifying for me. We'd taken a cool photo together and made plans to meet up again soon in San Francisco, which, of course, tragically couldn't happen because Sean was assassinated.
So you've mentioned being accosted and bugged by the man who would later be identified as Lennon's assassin. That's obviously unimaginable and terrifying. How did that impact you personally and professionally?
Well, that kept me really feeling horrible because that creep rudely confronted and followed me when I left the Dakota after our interview and kept bugging me until I finally got rid of him. I should have reported him to the Dakota security team, and I felt guilty for nearly 45 years ever since for not doing so. I never say or print his name either because he doesn't deserve any publicity or ever being paroled from prison.
So when you wrote your book, how did you navigate sharing such intense personal moments while respecting privacy and safety concerns?
Good question. I included as much as I felt comfortable with and remembered well. Plus, I asked some folks if they felt okay about me writing about them. And thank goodness they all did.
So what inspired you to write Confessions of a Rock and Roll Name Dropper at this point in your life?
Well, I always wanted to because I felt encouraged by John Lennon, who told me he loved getting books autographed by people. And I finally had time after years and years to start writing my book when the pandemic hit because my TV production job stopped. So book writing finally became possible and my full time gig. Plus, getting it published, edited, and promoted also has taken me lots of time.
So with so many incredible stories, how did you decide which moments to include and which ones to leave out?
Well, the ones that meant the most to me and others in my life were what I featured for the most part. But I left out some stories that may have super insulted some people so they wouldn't be pissed off.
Naturally. So your book captures not just music, but the culture and energy of the era. How important was it to you to transport readers into that world?
Super important. The sex and drugs and rock and roll that took place all throughout my life and my career, plus so much else, is what makes my memoir fascinating for readers and for me.
I agree with that. That is, learning and seeing it from someone who lived it's just a really special experience. And I think you did a great job of doing that. So, looking
Thank you.
back on your career, your experiences, and the people that you've met, what lessons about resilience, creativity, or intuition would you want our listeners to take away?
Well, I hope they'll work as hard as they can to keep their lives positive and productive, no matter how they're raised, treated, educated, or employed. And they should never give up, like I never did.
Are there any misconceptions about working in rock radio or music journalism that you would like to clear up?
Well, I think many people see music journalism as a flaky, non serious career, but that's totally untrue. It's about so much more than just being a rock fan. You have to be able to do great research, come up with important questions, and write articles and or shows really well.
So, how do you feel your relationship with music and these iconic figures has shaped who you are today?
It's taken me all the way to the top of my world and created so much interest among everyone I've ever met and or ended up loving or working with. Plus, it's made me who I am today. And that's no doubt why I still go to so many live concerts.
That's awesome to hear that you're still part of the music scene. So, for someone picking up your book for the first time, what story or moment do you hope resonates most?
Hmm. Well, obviously, my major interviews, starting with John Lennon's last one, and my many others included David Bowie, Mick Jagger, the Ramones, etc., and so many to connect with. Plus, my relationships, my locations, and my travels come made up for good stories, especially when I lived and studied dance on Bali in Indonesia. I love when people read about that.
That is beautiful. And so many great people that I feel like I'm sitting next to greatness talking to you because of just knowing that you've spoken to so many wonderful artists that influenced my life. And it just is really, truly a privilege. So, do you have advice for aspiring music journalists, broadcasters, or storytellers?
Well, I hope they'll all get inspired by reading my book to see how I made it, plus listen to radio stations, check out podcasts, magazines, documentaries, shows, and of course, go to plenty of live concerts.
So, where can listeners connect with you, your book, and any upcoming projects that you have, Lori?
Well, my book website has plenty of contact info for me, everywhere from email to social media posts, that kind of thing. Plus, book purchase suggestions and my radio, TV, and podcast interviews are also included in the website. And the website is confessionsofarockandrollnamedropper.com. And I hope everybody checks it out. It would make me feel really great.
I will definitely have that linked in the show notes so that listeners can go check it out. And I would highly recommend that if you are a rock and roll fan, this is a must read book. I just have to leave you guys with that. So, Lori, that's really all the questions that I had for you today. Is there anything particular you'd like to share with the listeners, real quickly, as a final note?
I'm just so excited to have my life story in a book for everybody to read and understand, and it just makes me feel great, and I hope that not only that they love my book, but they'll leave an online 5-star review to let people know how much they enjoyed it, because that's really important to me and helps promote my book too.
Absolutely. That is very important. And as a fellow author, I can't agree with her more. Please do pick up her book and give her a great review. I read it and reviewed it, and I will link you guys to my review on that in the show notes as well. But Lori, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey with us today, and from your early days with Transistor Radio to creating legendary musical specials that are just incredible. Capturing history in your memoir and your story is just so inspiring and unforgettable. So, to our listeners, make sure you go pick up Lori Kay's Confessions of a Rock and Roll Name Dropper and follow her work through her website. And again, thank you for tuning in to the Mind of Cy Marie today. Until next time, on the next episode, where we explore stories that shape, challenge, and inspire us all.
Thanks so much.